Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Finch Knife Company Runtly. That's actually the name, Runtly. I don't think it's a word, but there it is. First off, though, in the name of full disclosure, I want to thank Finch Knife Company for sending this guy along. They reached out to me, I think, on Instagram and said, hey, Nick, we've been following your stuff for a while. We just released a knife. You want to take a look? No obligation. Sure thing. I sent him my disclaimer. Told them I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly, and they sure sent it along. Nonetheless, we do have to assume this is the best quality controlled one of these guys ever, and I'm doing my best not to let that fact affect the nature of my review. Nevertheless, full disclosure, there you go. Next thing, let's do a size comparison. This actually isn't that big of a knife here. We are looking here at, here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2, the Spyderco Delica, as well as the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. So you can see here, this is a relatively small knife, which is, well, I think it'll be appealing to a lot of folks. So that's good. Then finally, a quick note on this guy. This is, who the heck is Finch Knife Company? Have you ever heard of these folks? Probably not, unless you follow on Instagram, you might not know this, and I'm grabbing another knife I'm gonna need for the review. But basically, the Finch folks are they are doing. They're related to the Raven Watch Company, I believe, which is kind of cool, and they've decided to branch out into knives, and so, hey, why not, right? Check it out. So, let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of this very interesting little knife right here. So the good side. One thing I'll say is that the size of this guy is going to make this easy for a lot of different folks. It is not a very long knife. We are coming in here under 2.5 inches, making this an option for a number of cities here, at least in the U.S., even the ones with the most very restrictive laws on there, so that's a good thing. Next thing, this has a very nice action. No wrist whatsoever, deploys quite easily. Also very easy to pull out using the nail nicks for whatever reason. There are 2 of them, and they are present. So that's that. But I gotta say, it's a very reliable action. There is absolutely no difficulty with deployment. This guy fires like a dream every time, so that's a beautiful thing. Well, maybe not like a dream. I don't know if I dream about this particular knife, but it definitely fires every time. That's good. Next thing, blade-wise, we're looking at a fine little blade right here. We have ourselves a sort of Wharncliffe-y, I mean, it is a Wharncliffe sort of utility sort of thing, reverse tanto, I don't freaking know. Either way, it is a solid little blade here. The steel on this is N690, which is a reasonable budget steel. It is a relatively thin edge, which actually I do appreciate very much. This guy comes out to a very, very thin little edge, which makes it cut quite well. It has a sharpening choil, which is well done, and covers the entirety of the plunge. I gotta say, blade-wise, there's a lot to like about this guy. And there is actually a reason for these kinds of Wharncliffe utility-style blades. I mean, in many different situations, this kind of a blade shape can be very, very useful and can be very helpful. And so I think for a lot of folks, this is going to be just what the doctor ordered, so to speak, in terms of the blade. Next thing, there are some very nice little touches to this guy that make it feel like it was a little bit more designed than perhaps some of your random, some of your random micro-brand stuff out there. For instance, the flipper tab on this is very low profile and reasonably rounded off. It's very easy to use. There's no real concern with it, but it is a very low profile sort of thing. You have a pivot collar here, which appears to either be looks to be some variety of metal or another. I can't vouch for which one, but it's a nice little touch. It doesn't need to be there, but it's cool that it is. You've got some unusual colors on this guy. You do have your normal black. I think you've got the puke green G10, the jade, I'm sorry, is the technical term, or this little yellow guy, and even like the polished liners on this guy. The liners on this are not just silver, they are actually somewhat polished, which I think adds a lot to it, and so I think there are some really nice touches. Then finally, I have to say, this particular pocket knife has excellent lume. As many of you may know, I am a lume snob. When I'm looking at a wristwatch, I am a big fan of the luminous compound that is used to illuminate, for instance, the numerals even late at night. This is the very first knife that I am aware of, at least in the production world, that uses lume. I'm going to charge this with a very powerful flashlight. And what you will see is that actually this uses what appears to be superluminova as a crystal on top of this logo, and the logo itself is lumed. Is this at all necessary in any way, shape, or form? No, probably not. Chances are, if it is too dark for you to find your knife, it's probably a little dark for you to be using it. But at the same time, it's kind of a cool little touch, and it's something that goes a little bit above and beyond. It's something that shows that they gave a damn. Nice nod to their horological heritage. So you know what? I'm loving the lume. To me, at least, all that is the good. It's got great lume, some nice touches here, a nice blade, solid action. a size that I think is going to make this a great choice for a lot of folks. On the great side, to me, this is a little hard to quantify. You could make a pretty good argument that the blade is pretty great here, but for me at least, I think what I like a lot about this guy is the sense of humor. Look, there are so many knives that are coming out these days that are super high speed, low drag, that are super tactical, that are really argued direct. They're aimed directly at sort of the. They're aimed at the badass market, for lack of a better term. And so I love seeing something that is very explicitly both marketed as well as designed with a little bit of a sense of humor. It's designed not to be, a crazy, tactical tool or anything like that. This knife feels like it was designed and named, and frankly, all parts of this had like a little bit of a smile. I feel like this is going to be a lot more appealing to the mass market as a result, and to me at least, that's great. I like seeing knives that are targeted, just as we have thousands of knives that have been targeted towards first responders, towards tactical types. It's nice to see something going the other way that I think could resonate with a group of people that a lot of the modern knife companies are leaving right behind. So to me at least, that's what's great, is that they're doing this with a bit of a sense of humor, and I appreciate that. Bad side. This is a relatively large knife in the pocket here. I mean, it's not a big knife in terms of blade length or anything, but it's wider than you'd think, and it's also a relatively long, well, maybe not relatively long, but there's a fair amount of bulk to this guy. It's also relatively thick, is one other thing to highlight here. We are coming in here a little bit thicker than the Spyderco PM2 for a knife that is fundamentally relatively simple. And so that is something you want to keep in mind. Next thing, the loomed section here. It's great, except the thing is, this little loomed area actually sticks up a little bit above the handle there. That's something that feels like it might want to have been recessed a little bit more than it is, and I'd like to see them address that. Next thing, this is using 2 nail nicks on either side. Now look, I can see for some, it provides a little extra traction. The thing is, when you've got this much blade sticking up there, I don't know that you need it. And so in practice, what you end up with are 2 little areas that capture crud as you're going through your daily cutting sort of situation. So not a big deal, but it's kind of not great. Next thing, the clip on this guy is very low to the body, and it's actually relatively tight. This is a clip that's really optimized for yoga pants and skinny jeans, and I'm going to be honest here, that's probably a pretty good descriptor of the target market, right? But at the same time, that's going to be something that is maybe a little less than ideal, especially if you're wearing thicker pants. Not the end of the world, but it's definitely a thing. Next thing, ergonomically speaking, this isn't amazing. You can choke up a little bit. You can, come up to this area, and then you're on the jimping in both of these places, and that's fine, but it's also not super comfortable because you've got this area digging into your hand here. But if you choke back a little bit, you've got, even me with my relatively small hands, I got a 3-finger grip on this bad boy, and honestly, it's not the most secure thing ever. It's not terrible, but it's going to be a little bit small, and even I have relatively smaller hands. So I think there are smaller knives out there that offer a little bit better ergonomics. Then finally, the price on this guy is not super competitive. We are looking at $140 here, and that's using N690 steel. And N690 is a steel that is fine, I guess. It's good to go. But it's just not that impressive at these kinds of higher end price points. And so I'd like to see them maybe think about dialing that up a little bit, or maybe dialing that price down a little bit, because honestly, it just feels like you can get a lot more value elsewhere in the knife world. So to me, at least, that's what's bad, is price isn't super competitive. The ergo's not amazing. The clip's a little low and tight. The nail nicks are and it's a little weirdly large in the pocket. Look, final conclusion. This is, a neat little knife. I mean, it's got a nice size, a good action, a good blade, some nice details, excellent loom. And I think it's got a funky attitude that's going to really go a long way towards the mainstream. That's something that we need a lot in the knife world right now, and I'm glad to see it. But it's also a little bulky in the pocket. The clip's a little low with the weird nail nicks. The ergos are, and it's a little bit pricey. Honestly, I'm sort of 2 minds. I think it's a fine little knife, and I think, like I said, it's got an attitude that I think is going to resonate with a lot of folks, right? This is something that I feel like isn't out of place at a microbrewery or at a coffee shop or at a watch meetup or something like that, where people are going to be like, oh, hey, that kind of world. I can see this doing really well in a market that the high-speed, low-drag tactical people are just failing to reach. There are going to be a group of people who would buy this knife, but who might not buy something that's a little bit more like is the Therum Forge Mini Archbishop, which is actually cheaper, but it's got a little bit more of a weapony feel to it. Not much, but it's got a little bit of that. And so I think that there is going to be a population for which this is going to be, you know, a really good choice, just at the purely aesthetic level, at the purely marketing level. I think for them it's going to work out well. But if you're already deep in the knife world, I feel like this guy might end up coming up a little short. Because there's nothing here that feels like it's earning the price that's, you know, beyond a lot of other things that are available. It's hip, but if you're willing to go a little more mainstream, you can get better value. Get things like the Spyderco Dragonfly, a little native. You can get an Open L. You can get like the Summit Half Dome, the Benchmade Proper, the Quiet Carry IQ. There are a bunch of things that are coming in or around this price range that are going to offer a slightly more compelling experience, maybe without some of the same, I don't know, it's going to be a very different sort of attitude in some cases, but you're going to end up getting a little bit more value out of the blade, you know, and you know, that kind of thing. So I think if you're willing to go to something a little bit more mainstream in the knife world, you can do better price-wise. But the thing is, look, at some level, this is the argument against anything hip, right? This is the argument against anything that's kind of got this overall ethos. I mean, I'm hearing myself, and mind you, I don't drink any beer, so I have no freaking idea what I'm talking about, but, you know, you'll hear people saying things like, and I might, oh, fancy craft beers don't get you any more drunk than Natural Light, and Natty Light's way cheaper. I mean, there's sort of that feeling of like, okay, yes, certainly. You know, Chinola's another brand that I think negotiates this, where it's like, you know, yeah, you're paying a lot more, but for some people, that's always a thing. It's always true. You can get more for less elsewhere, but I can still see this having a target market. I can still see this being a choice that might appeal to some people, whether in that sort of demographic or maybe within the conventional knife world. So if you like the design, if you like the style, you're not looking to get every last bit of value out of it, you're okay at N690, then you know what? I think you might find this little Finch right here pretty damn tweet. Okay, anyways, there you go. I hope you didn't mind me raving about this for a little while. Okay, and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.